adaptation. Same card.
It's mind-boggling.
Guys, we're set up.
Cool. Let's do this.
We're on.
Tobin.
We're recording.
Okay,
do it.
we are recording.
Good job, Tobin.
We're back with another pod. We're on.
We're on.
Back
we're missing
again.
a team member. We're going to have a team member bail in a little bit. But we're back.
We're back.
We are back.
again.
Yep,
Jiu-jitsu is the art of adaptation.
that's correct.
And so...
And flexibility is the key to mental health. Remember
Yes, it
that.
is.
Yeah.
It's very important.
Do we complain?
Extremely important.
Yeah.
No, and
adapt.
that is exactly the metaphor that we should adapt. And I have to work that with my child.
And
is
your
that
wife.
I would say my wife needs to learn how to be
Oh,
flexible.
okay, I'm leaving. Just kidding.
But yeah, that is a common argument, which is true across everything in these postmodern times, is that it's so easy to spot the flaws in the other side. And it's very hard to spot your own.
How about this one? You spot it, you got it.
That sometimes is very true.
I think it's very true because
Sometimes.
I think whatever we're seeing in other people, we can't help but have some element of
Absolutely.
that within ourselves.
Absolutely.
Otherwise, we'd be clueless to even see it.
Absolutely.
If that makes sense.
Yes, but in the postmodern sense, and here's where postmodern goes off the rails.
I don't even know what that means, but
If
it's
you
all good.
see a person run up, murder a guy, and scream and go, I saw that. It's not spotted, you got it. It's you're pointing out an objective fact. What happens is, in the postmodern political manipulation, is people will say, oh, that means you must have it too. And then it becomes a thing that...
I think that you spot it, you got it doesn't apply to like an action so much as judgment. I'm judging someone as being inflexible. Whether you're
agree,
inflexible or whether you're not is not the same as did you murder that person or not.
I agree.
Those are
but-
totally
okay,
different things we're
let's
talking
say, are you judging a rapist? That's wrong.
Yes, rape is wrong.
And a person who screams all the time, you might say that's wrong. Judging them for being wrong is not necessarily spot it, you got it. That's my point.
Well, I think it's a little bit more
a
nuanced
spectrum,
than
yes,
that,
I
and
agree.
that we're talking about like somebody's committing, doing something to harm someone, like yelling, screaming, whatever, versus that person is being inflexible. That person
Yep.
is, not being fair. Like things that are more.
I agree, it's nuanced.
Yes.
Definitely, it's the whole spot it, you got it, has a lot more nuance than I think we give it.
So what's the topic today, Tobin?
Guys. guys. We're going to talk... Okay, so 'tis the season. Christmas is coming up.
It is.
The
Chris's
year is
birthday?
I love Christmas.
year's ending.
Chris birth.
I'm not a fan of coming up on 60, but I do love Christmas.
I like Santa slippers with
Well,
stars on the eyes.
the end of the year in jiu-jitsu world, people start getting belted up.
Yes.
This is when a lot of the times
That
they
does
have
happen.
a winter
You're
ceremony,
right.
right?
Chris got his
I got
belt in
mine.
December of
Yep.
1996.
That's
one,
right.
One thing that I'm wondering about is these belting rituals. So we're seeing the belting rituals coming out online, and we're seeing all these different things that people do. And I'm kind of curious where these rituals come from and what they mean a little bit, because there's a spectrum of professional,
Yes.
sane belting rituals
To
all the way to absolutely
Insane
nuts.
hazing.
Insane hazing, right?
So, I'm going to say this, I'm going to admit it with a little bit of shame here, is the whole belt whipping thing, I started it. And I started it, the Machados were gone, we were new black belts, we were authorized to promote a blue belt, and we were trying to come up with something, and everyone throwing ideas, because the jiu-jitsu community, at least from my perspective, ours, we didn't know what the ritual was, so we made it up. And that got really popular and became a horrid way to promote. But then in that same year, So I used to, in privates, from white to a blue belt, when I would be rolling with whoever it was, I would grind them out. They're exhausted. We say, no, you got to keep going. You have to tap me out. No, I'm too tired. Nope, you have to tap me out. And then I would sneak off their white belt and tie around a blue belt, often without them even being aware. Then they're exhausted. They got this horrified look on their face. And then they look down and go, oh, I'm a blue belt now. And it was a cool way, I thought. But to go from blue to purple, I would have to beat them a lot harder, purple to brown, so I would Iron Man them first. And then I would be the last one, wrap a belt around them. And I think, and I'm saying this really early in the pod here, but I think that is the coolest, purest, zenest way of transitioning to that next belt in the middle of an exhausting roll.
I think that's cool. I like that way. It seems like metaphorically sound and cool. That's interesting that you came up with that.
I did. Now I know someone will say, no, you didn't. They came up with that in Brazil. No.
So how did you receive your belts? Was there any ritual?
None.
None. Like None. What? Did they just, so I got my blue belt like this. Here, put this on. Like thrown at me. And pretty much my purple belt too. Is that how they did it?
Yes.
The Machados, they just threw belts at you and they're like, here, put this on? Because that's how I got my blue and my purple belt that way.
Yeah. Like I'm sure.
There was no ritual.
that some people probably did have that. And I know like Haueter, Hoist, and Horion were setting up a belt procedure to be tested and be evaluated. Most of the sport guys just said, when you're that belt, you are that here. You're up a belt. It was far less ritualized and or officially tested.
So let's...
Even black?
When
all those guys got promoted, they're just like... Shh.
Well, it was like for my belt, it was we were all in a room. They gave a couple purple belts out. Then they started to do black belts. I had no idea I would be in that a group. Part of me didn't want to be because I was really comfortable in the brown belt. And I really wanted to compete as a brown belt. And they called my name and I went up, obviously graciously was promoted, then I was a black belt, and then everybody rolled afterwards. But was there a test? No.
Were there speeches?
Hegan gave a speech, Carlos gave a speech.
So it was like a ceremony.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was like a promotion ceremony. It was more than just getting thrown a belt.
To black belt was.
Yeah, and those people who got their purple belts that day are also
a little bit, yes,
participated in the ceremony.
But I know,
which is kind of what we do here now.
Yes,
a lot of times
it's much more the way
give
we
speeches and just hand out the belts, and then everybody rolls.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, there's a bunch of other crazy stuff going on out there. I wanted to kind of list through some of the stuff that people are doing.
Run them through. I answered everything way too fucking fast.
No, that's okay.
There's more to say.
We're a little scrambled up today, but that's all good.
Scrambled eggs.
We're just here to talk. It's easy. So people do the Iron Man. So that's one thing that you guys do. So Iron Man is everybody lines up by rank, lowest rank first.
The Iron Man is, yes. Let's say you are a blue belt about to be a purple belt. They've evaluated you over the last months. You say, yes, he's ready. So you can either formally have a day of Iron Manning, which is smart when you have a huge school. If not, you just for me, there are some athletes who they don't compete very much. They've never been under the pressure. And Iron Manning is a good way to put people through a pressure test, especially people that don't want to compete in formal competitions. Now, if you formally compete, to me, it's a less necessary piece.
I would always say I never got Iron Man to get a belt, but I did compete. So
you competed, which to me is much more emotionally scary and intense than an Iron Man in your home gym.
Yeah.
That's just my opinion. But an Iron Man is a good method to get that athlete at the end of the Ironman being like, wow, I just went through the whole room. I can do this, right? So in that sense, I love it as a way, especially when they're unaware that's the reason they're being Ironman. So in like wrestling in high school, we would always have Ironmans. And everyone would run around the hot room, and a coach would slap you. You'd go in the middle, slap a guy, go in the middle, takedown fight, and you would hold that spot until you were taken down. Or reversal spot. And that was a really good and intense way to build a whole team, because you run if you're not rolling. And it's always bugged me in the jiu-jitsu rooms when there's an odd man out or whatever. My high school wrestler's work ethic says that person ought to be running right now, doing push-ups. Or you should not be seeking rest in training.
Unless you're like maybe needing to pace yourself because you're
60,
aging,
exactly.
and you don't want us to have to use the AED on you.
That was
so maybe you have to go every other round.
That was my.
So it's all relative, right?
Yes.
It's all relative.
Definitely.
I like the judo version where you basically are just expected to be standing. So there's no like
Lounging.
seeking rest and lounging and sitting down and chilling.
Good, yep.
It's sort of just like, just at least stay on your feet.
No leaning.
No leaning
is a
against the
great
wall,
rule.
no
That's
chilling
a
out.
Very Marine Corps rule.
So as
no
far-
leaning, no hands in your pockets.
As far as the Ironman goes, I've heard some people that are familiar with the streets of LA that the Ironman reminded them of being jumped into a gang.
I can see that.
That made me kind of go like, oh, that's kind of weird ethically, because being jumped into a gang seems like obvious psychological manipulation and.
But again, like, it's all on a spectrum, is it? Because what one person views as a criminal, evil, bad gang, another culture sees that as a group of friends protecting themselves against the real bullies or a corrupt municipal government. So it could be not necessarily,
If it's necessary to be beat up a little bit in order to be tough and strong, I would rather my friends beat me up
than
the
bad guys.
adversary
Yes.
out in the
Yeah,
streets.
yeah.
That kind of makes sense. I could see that a little bit.
And this is not a gentle art, even though people call it the gentle art, because it's relatively gentle, but I mean, why
Compared
are
to
we
the
all
punch and
jacked
kick,
up
it's gentle,
if
yeah.
it's gentle?
Yep, that's true. And I would also add in there, like all tribes have a bonding ritual of some sort. And there's a lot of people that amateur anthropologists have speculated, and here's why I mean amateur, that, back in the past, all men would go through a ritual that they go from child to adult, either requiring a fight or a hunt or war. And modern anthropologists don't say that's necessarily true, but yeah.
All right. So moving on from the Ironman, we see people doing the belt whipping thing, the Gauntlet. So you saying that you were
That's the
gauntleting
one
people?
that I regret. Now, I'm sure someone will say, "Oh, Chris Haueter didn't start that." I swear to fun God, I started that.
Well, some people have said it publicly that you started it.
I
and
started that whipping ritual.
a lot of people are still doing
Still
it.
doing it, and I regret it.
And it can be, why do you regret it?
All right, so like all things, it can get out of hand. So that day, it started to get out of hand. Me and one of the other black belts, I think it was Rick Williams, said, whoa, guys, all right, let's organize it where there's 2 lines. You have to go through the line, like one person got whipped in the face, almost in the eye, and then you wrap your gi around your head, and you hold your arms up, and then they're getting whipped. Well, one hit, only one hit each guy, and we refined it literally that day. because the first guy you went through was way too fucking gnarly, and he was hit in the face.
And he never came back again.
I don't know, because I don't even remember who it was. It's quite possible. But so anyways, and then there was a time where I was promoting one of my now black belts, Eric Hemphill, to purple belt, and he was a young, tough as nails guy. And Matt Thornton and I, Matt will blame it on me on him, put icy hot on the belt.
Oh.
So it not only gave a whip mark, but
it burned him.
Tattooed in icy hot. And it was definitely wrong of us. Completely wrong. And admitting this in public, this is my mea culpa. Please forgive me. I at least know it was wrong now.
I think that's pretty classic. A bunch of dudes getting together and getting a little carried away and then sitting down after and going, oh.
I would say that
Chris
got carried away a lot about a lot of different things.
Yes.
And he's now going to be 60 years old and maybe think some of those decisions, he wouldn't do the same thing now.
Absolutely
Why?
not.
I don't know. I mean, I guess it's just a evolution in morality or what? Young men do stupid things? I don't know.
Young men do
And women.
stupid things. Yeah, and women. And
More men.
More men, yeah. Or it's certainly in a different way, like it's often been said, just as a general stereotype, that when boys resolve conflict by hitting and grappling, and women resolve it by being mean, like an insult to their looks or their, because men in the most primitive part of our culture, males judge each other by who is the better at athletics, which ultimately means who wins in a fight. And women judge each other, I believe this, on who is going to be able to select the best male. And that's kind of why, and that's true within the much of the animal kingdom.
But I think that those aren't always
overlap.
hard and
Yes,
fast, because
yes.
there's a lot of scrappy women out there that beat the
Yes.
shit out of each other, and then there's men who would never fight and just would
Yes.
talk crap about people.
And I would say that mother bear has also evolved to be able to protect her cub against that asshole male grizzly running in the way, even though often she is the one who dies.
And then he gets the babies anyways.
And then he kills them. Because that's our life. And then one could say, on an evolutionary sense, that's why bears are tough. Because that tough, mean, asshole, narcissist gene is the one that gets carried through. And I would argue in humans that there is a default gene that we have that will default to the narcissist asshole in the room, because we subconsciously see it as strength.
And some women are very attracted to that as well.
Yes. Which blows my mind.
Yeah, scary stuff.
Scary stuff. All right, next ritual.
As a delegate of the almost middle-aged grappling community, we forgive you for the belt whipping.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
I never experienced it, but
Me neither. I
think
never
that's-
experienced it either.
And I remember once having a discussion / argument after training, after I taught, about why would I have the male athletes get whipped, but not the women?
You never whipped a woman?
I've never whipped a woman.
Wow.
So does that mean I am a misogynist?
Yes.
Does it mean I have chivalry?
Maybe.
Does it mean that if it's wrong to whip a female, why is it right to whip a male, right? That leads an ethical question that I believe is worth philosophizing on.
Yeah. Do you have any answers to that?
It ultimately means to me that it's probably wrong to also whip the male.
I think so. I mean, if you had a whole group you were promoting and you were promoting a woman that day too, you'd just whip everybody else and not the woman?
You'd have to run her through.
Yeah. And I
Because
know
in
I've
that
seen
sense,
videos of women getting whipped
I've
on the
seen it.
internet.
Yep.
Thanks to you. And
you would have to run them through the gauntlet.
But you've never whipped. You've never made a woman go through the gauntlet. I personally have
never made a female go through a gauntlet. I personally stopped that within the first year I started it. I realized this is not a good way to do it.
I feel like I was around for whipping. I was in a room when people were getting whipped. I just never personally got whipped.
Maybe that's true.
You were whipping people when I was training. I just never personally got whipped because you would just go like this. Maybe because you didn't want to whip me. So you're just, well, let's not make a big deal about this. Just put this on.
Maybe also what happened was that fairly quickly, I did not initiate it. But if the room did, I would still join in. Which is typical of what? The dynamics of bullies. Is people join in because they don't want to be the one person who says, wait, stop, this is wrong, because then all eyes go on him and you get bullied. And that's a problem in every youth group across the world.
I'm going to voice up and just say I think that whipping's fucking weird. And I think the people that do it, I don't know, I'd like to just respect the people that do it and say I don't understand what you're doing completely. That's the way I think about it. But my instinct is that it's fucking weird. Yeah. And then let's get even weirder.
It's juvenile.
Tobin has a weirder one that I just heard
of. Choking people unconscious to give them their belts.
That's horrible.
That's the worst idea that I've ever fucking heard. I don't care. I try not to be judgmental, but...
That's the stupidest thing I've ever seen.
That's terrible. That's awful.
Now, there's one ritual that on one sense you could say is good, and on another it's awful. I think it was a couple of years ago. The story went viral. When I think about it, I get a tear in my eye. There was a young kid, I think they were like 12 years old, 13, and everyone throws them. And he went through 40 guys and he died. That night it killed him.
Yeah, I remember that video.
And that instructor, for doing that, is culpable.
Yeah.
Now, what it made me reflect back on is I thought, God, the whipping thing was bad. What if somebody lost an eye? Or obviously the choking thing's horrible, but some people are taught that choke out is a very gentle thing. It's a rite of passage to have gone out before. And that goes back to the 1950s and 60s.
But it causes brain damage?
Causes brain damage.
Like, we only get one brain, people.
Yeah, I'm totally against it.
That's horrible. Horrible. Bad idea. Ignorant.
All these things to me feel like a symbol of we own you.
Yes.
Right? So, like, I'm going to give you a little bit of light and a little praise by giving you this belt. But I'm going to remind you that I own you.
Yes.
Is what it feels like to me. And I feel like the philosophy that you guys have developed over the years is very antithesis of that type of relationship with the people are under you.
Yeah,
is
I
that
would
more,
hope so.
As you know, when they come as brand new, you nurture them a little bit and take care of them a little bit. But as they grow through their experience, it seems like you guys kind of more are setting them free and guiding them instead of owning them.
Yes.
And I feel like a lot of these rituals are a symbol of being owned by something. And I don't know if that's like 100% bad. You know, I mean, it's good to be a part, you know, I go to Harvard University. I want that Harvard stamp on me, you know, it's a good thing for me. And I think...
in your fraternity and get hazed and go through that thing, like it's a common thing that tribes do to initiate you in the tribe.
And a lot of people need that. They need to feel like they're part of something and answering to somebody, or maybe they wouldn't show up anymore. I don't know.
And unless they've had that hazing experience, they feel like they didn't belong. And that's also very common in the military. Different units have their own versions. My jump wings were pounded on my chest, never went around and punched my chest. My pec muscle hurt for a month because they punched the wings in your chest. And
what is it? What are the wings? It's a pin?
The pin.
The pin into your chest?
Yes, and they punch it in your
horrible.
chest. It's called blood wings.
And it bleeds?
Yes.
Oh.
But what hurt is not the bleeding. What hurt is the punches hitting my pec muscle.
That kind of makes me woozy.
And by the
Stop.
the 10th one, it was like, I'm fucking like, I can't take it anymore. And I'm trying to take it. Boom, boom, It was awful. And that was a unit-specific thing, that not an airborne school, but when you're back in your unit. But that's a whole other story. Yeah, I hate blood wings.
Yeah, it kind of seems like through the training, you've kind of proved that you're tough and you don't need
That's
to
what
do it
I
like
think.
That. It just kind of seems like if you have a good training room and you really, it should be clear
That you are that next higher belt.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you're tough.
All right, here's the question then.
Yeah.
So that would bring us to what does that entail? It entails mind, body, and spirit. On the body part, you have to be fit. On the mind's part, you must have the knowledge, the skills, the techniques, and the spirit part is your maturity, your soul. Are you ready? And so in my threes, right, some people often think that mind part, the knowledge part, ought to be a test. And they'll ask, well, in algebra, you have to pass a test or you don't know algebra. So why in jiu-jitsu do I think we shouldn't have a test? Because that's my opinion. Not that I'm against it, like, because I've looked through and I've watched online how other people test, and I've gone, oh, that's cool. You know, you have to go through all the self-defense and whatever. But
you should be able to tell by rolling with the person if they know stuff, right?
That's
so
what I
that's kind of like, it's always a test. It's a constant evaluation.
Constantly
Every
a
time
test,
you as the coach roll with the student or watch the student roll with others, it's just not a formal, like, today you're going to pay your money and you're going to show me everything you know.
Yeah.
Because it's less of a show me what you know, but can you actually do it against a resisting opponent? This is what we're evaluating on.
Yes.
Some people are just evaluating on if the moves are in your brain.
Just the knowledge,
just because
yes.
it's in your brain doesn't mean you have the timing and ability to apply it against a live resisting opponent, which is the only thing that really matters, in my opinion.
I agree. And ultimately, that would logically conclude that it's all practice until it's a real fight. Even competition, it's all practice. And if it is math, and we have a job where you have to know your algebra and a trig because we're arranging steel beams all over, I don't want to, you got to have a test first. It's like, no, can you do the math and set the beam up? If you can, you're in. Even if you fudge the math.
So, go ahead.
I'm going to go hard on this one.
All right.
And I'm going to say, if you're an instructor and you're not rolling with your students all the time, or if you're old and you can't roll, standing there and watching them diligently. And if you're not doing that, and then you're whipping them during the ceremony, you're a fucking weirdo.
Oh, jeez, you're right. God,
I'm gonna call that out because I know that exists out there.
It does.
And I think that's, if you need to go, hey, so and so, I need to see whether they're tough or not. I'm gonna whip them with a belt because you haven't already figured out that they're tough by either watching them or rolling with them yourself. I think it's time to do some philosophical work and introspection.
But that's the question that I have, because Tobin, you keep saying this word tough. And I know that jiu-jitsu makes us tough, but
let's define what we mean.
For me, though,
tough,
as I'm progressing in age, and yes, I'm not worried about getting another belt because I'm already a 3rd degree black belt, in case you didn't know. Almost 4th degree next year. Anyways, in case you didn't know. But I feel less and less tough. So is tough something that we need to get promoted through the belts, especially if we're starting this at an older age? Or could toughness be replaced with skillfulness?
This is where I would say in my threes, mind, body, spirit. Mind is the knowledge part, but body and spirit is the toughness part. And toughness is relative to your station in life, your all kinds of other things, right? So the test, if it's a test like can you do all the self-defense things, show me the 3 sweeps, the 4 mounted arm bars, whatever, that is testing only the mind. It does not test the spirit, and the body.
So you got to test the body to the limits. That
You have to test all three. Or not test. You have to evaluate. As a coach, you should be evaluating all three of those and making sure that that athlete or that student, call them, is at their maximum potential that they'll ever be for this phase in their life. Because if I had my a dream world, there would be no event in which you became a belt except the black belt. So your white belt would slowly turn blue. One day you realize, God, it's kind of light blue now. Now it's, whoa, it's blue.
So you want more belts?
No, no belts.
I'm teasing.
And then a blue belt would slowly become a purple. And then you'd open up your Photoshop thing on the hue and saturation, and you'd pull it down and it would become brown. And then the black belt would be the only belt that's an actual event. But the colored belts just happen. That would be the dream way of doing it.
It's funny because I feel like in modern jiu-jitsu, it's like the colored belts are more of an event. Like
Yeah.
there's more emphasis on like I feel like in my arc, like when I got my blue belt, I like could not believe that I was a blue belt. Like it felt like such a big deal personally. And then as the belts went on, it was less important and more like,
I think
this is just a blend of progress.
Yeah, I think it's individual because for me, I felt like I got the blue belt and I was like, oh my God, I'm still so bad. Like it felt worse almost.
I mean, I didn't feel like good. Like I didn't feel like it was good, but I could remember walking into the school for the first time and training with blue belts and just getting absolutely destroyed. And then thinking that somebody thought that I was on that same type of level to me. I was like, whoa, this is insane.
See that.
I think maybe because I had a lot of access to black belts and maybe men. It's different because I was training with a lot of men, and then Chris and other black belts that were around at the time. That I just always got beat until I was at least a solid purple belt.
Yeah.
My experience on white to blue belt, probably because I came from other martial arts, including wrestling, is I hated being a white belt. Like, absolutely hated it.
And you were only a white belt for like a month?
6 months. And it was like, it was just, for me, like, ego-wise, and I would realize this at the time, like, God, this is a status thing. Like, why do I hate being a white belt? Like, when I'd tie the belt, I would think, God, I hate being a white belt. But once I was a blue belt, I felt like I was part of the club, right? So I don't know.
I was a white belt for 2 years. Solid. Nice. Solid 2 years. I know people are longer than that.
There are, yes.
Yeah, I was pretty bad.
Now, some schools of thought say that white to blue should be a big journey. Some schools of thought, which I lean more, is that blue to purple is the larger journey. And purple belt itself, that blue through the purple belt to the brown belt, is where you really cut your teeth, where you go from a child to full grown adult. You go from not being able to do the math to I can do the math. And the purple belt is the middle point, the pinnacle of that. And to get from white to a blue belt is going to happen by osmosis. You just have to show up, and you can't not learn how to perform a mounted armbar. You might not be great at it, but you're going to know how the pieces of the game move to where you can play a game. And when you can play the game, you're a blue belt. If it's the water analogy, when I could throw you in the deep end of the pool and you can swim back over the wall, you're a blue belt. If you can't, you're a white belt. But to learn how to actually swim and play the game, now it takes work. It's no longer just oh, I don't know that move. Here it is. Oh, I got it now. It's like, I know that move, but it's not working. I know how to recover guard, but it's not happening. I'm being passed. And that purple belt is where you've now, jiu-jitsu has grown a part of you.
Nice. That's solid. So ritual-wise, did we miss any? So I feel like the other ritual that is common, so we got the Gauntlet, we got the Iron Man, we got the choke 'em unconscious, we got the toss 'em. People do the toss 'em where they just throw them. It's the general
Deadly.
toss 'em ritual is a little more gentle. Like they'll just, sometimes, like.
Because it's all a spectrum. All of these, if done with care and concern.
Choking unconscious? No.
Not choking.
No, that one's insane.
Yeah. That's like ridiculous.
How about choke till they tap? That could be done with care and concern.
Yeah.
And then I think there's the professional ceremony, which also I think creates the same structure as these other rituals in a lot of ways, because it's clear who the top guy is. It's clear that the top guy is in charge of granting these levels, right?
It's a hierarchical structure.
Yeah,
no doubt.
Your thing. And then there's what I think works the best and is the coolest is like where one day the instructor, who we all kind of decide, okay, this guy's the man or woman.
Thank you.
Basically just, hey, everybody, real quick. Boom, so-and-so's a purple
That's
belt.
how I do it.
I like that style.
That's
I
how
feel
I
like
do
it kind of is more consistent with that growth arc where you're describing the belt just sort of blending.
Yes.
Yeah, we don't wait one day. Okay, every December and June we do belts.
And
we don't do that.
We don't do that.
Yeah, and it's nice because there's no anticipation. Like, this is the belt ceremony.
Yeah,
Right.
I feel like
am I going to get called today, or do I have to wait 6 months till the next one?
Yeah,
That's
exactly.
comfortable. And then I think also lumping it all together too takes away from the individual, because I can remember being in a belt ceremony at different times in my jiu-jitsu and kind of going like, oh, that guy, that's that belt? Okay, that guy's this belt? Okay, this girl is that belt? What? Like, it just kind of was, instead of going like, oh, this was the one person this one day.
Right.
And let's consider that. Oh, yeah, that's cool. And then it gives you time to
cleaner.
think about
I
it.
think
And it
it's
just
cleaner.
seems like it is a little more respectful to everybody.
I think it's ethically cleaner.
Yeah, that's what I feel like.
And it definitely avoids the whole. So, 10 or 15 years ago, I went to a seminar. The guy who hosted me was a purple belt who was then in his garage because he left his instructor who was the black belt. And I'm not going to say who they are because I don't want people going, oh, that's in yours. But basically, he had overheard me while I was peeing at the Mundials or whatever it was. He overheard something I said, then asked the person, who's that guy, that somehow called me. This is like pre-internet, or not, it's not pre-internet, but it was back when people like him and I didn't fucking use the internet very much. And somehow I go out there, he picks me up, he proceeds to tell me this horror story of how he loved the jiu-jitsu, and he started hating it because of the particular subculture of culture that he was in. And obviously I'm saying this to protect the names of the guilty and the innocent. And he and I had lots of talks that weekend, and it made me like wonder, like, okay, what kind of an instructor do I want to be? I want to be a role model of what I would want my children to be when they grow up. And martial arts, as I think us in here know, and probably half of you out there hearing it, is very parallel to cults. And I would encourage everyone to do a little studying, go down the rabbit hole on what is a cult, and what is that line that crosses from being a healthy organization into a cult. And what you will find is the subject doesn't matter as much as the structure. And cults work on a thing where, and almost always, and some unhealthy groups have cult elements, but they're not really cults, but it usually means you need a charismatic leader that somehow whatever he says is right, no matter what. Even if you know it's a lie, if he says it's right, then it becomes the truth, right? That's the like chief ingredient. And then it has to have a structure in which you feel if you leave that group, you will be shamed and banished. And that's true of all the cults, whether it's Heaven's Gate, Scientology, whatever it is. Not only will you be shamed, but you might even be stalked and potentially violenced upon if you leave. And then there's a few other ones
Or maybe just slandered.
Slandered, yes.
You're not physically harmed, but emotionally harmed.
For sure, yeah. So those are the three main things, right? And what I have observed is a lot of martial arts groups in which I respect their skill level. I respect the martial art product in which they produce. But I think the structure is either partially, a little bit, or mostly occultish. And I wanted to avoid that thing. I don't want to be a cult leader. Like, I have an ego. Like, part of me would love whatever I say is right. But I know for me that would create a very unhealthy version of me if I start thinking that I'm always right. My wife might say that's how I am, which I would say it's a spot it, you got it.
She might.
Spot it, you got it.
She might.
Yeah, I think the hazing rituals, I feel like it feels culty because it puts you in this position where you no longer have boundaries that you can enforce.
You don't have your own boundaries anymore.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct. It's like you have to give to the group. Do whatever you want with me.
Right.
Ooh,
And that's kind of what it is. When you submit to a hazing ritual, you're saying do whatever you want with me.
You're right.
And your boundaries no longer matter, which I think gives like ultimate control to the hierarchical powers.
Yes.
And so not that can't be managed ethically by the higher ups, but I think it becomes culty when giving the higher ups that power and then they manipulate it and use it in an abusive type of way. So that's why those moments are uncomfortable.
And Chris, I believe, never started that from that perspective, right? For him, it was just like fun kind of like...
This was fun. In the Marine Corps, we did this. In the Army, we did this.
Yes.
We need some form of hazing.
Like that's what you were used to from the military.
Yeah,
it wasn't...
totally.
You weren't trying to lead any kind of organization. You were just giving people belts and slapping them around, and then people took it to a whole nother level through incorporating it into their organizations and their structure.
Yes.
I could totally see that. I mean, I did so much stupid stuff when I was young, right?
Yeah.
And it's how life goes.
Can they still haze like that in the military, though, I wonder? Or do
That's
people start...
been reduced a lot, I think.
Yeah.
Well,
over the years.
okay, so for the last 50 years in the U.S. Armed Forces, hazing is no longer an institutionalized thing. It's individual unit. So if you go through some really hard, arduous school, there's not going to be hazing in that school, whether it's like special operations things, infantry school, ranger school, SEAL, all that stuff. But at a unit level, they often have it. Like as a cop, there's often hazing that happens. Like you graduated the academy, you got your badge, and then suddenly you get the part of you're the new guy, you're the rookie and the trainee. And then there is ritual hazing that, depending on the department, have often done for generations. And
it could be things like teasing, though, right?
Teasing.
Like where it's like they'll make you go somewhere that you're looking for something that's not there, but they're not physically beating you.
One of the coolest ones that I saw, so it was a guy, he was ahead of me, he was rolling around in his own L car, all that, getting radio calls. The dispatch was in on it. They called him to a thing where he had to leave his car, and we all have keys to all the cars and guns, right? And they unlocked his door, rolled his window, stole his guns, and took a handful of broken glass and threw it all over. So when he comes back, it looks like a smash and grab happened. They got the AR, the shotgun, and oh my God, poor fucker. And then people are hiding, watching him, see how he responds on the radio. The long pause, like, I gotta call in a smash and grab crime on my own car. I just thought that was the funniest practical joke, right? And practical jokes can be really fun and funny.
Yeah.
But they can also be mean and injurious. Now, I didn't see that as being mean and injurious.
Yeah.
But there are some, and sometimes in some groups, whether it's law enforcement, military, fire departments often have it. And there's an amount of unhealthy practical joking and haste. Locking the guy in a locker for 12 hours.
Yeah.
Like, to me, that sounds like fucking hell.
Yeah, because you'd pee all over yourself.
Fuck that. I would just, I don't even like being in a car if I don't have a door. I would freak the fuck out.
Yeah, I had a buddy that was training jiu-jitsu in Northern California, and one of the things that they would do is they would choke out the new dudes and drag them into the bathroom and lock the bathroom door.
Oh, God.
And so that they'd wake up, like, on the floor of the bathroom.
Ugh.
Yeah, I thought that was kind of nasty. But,
super weird.
Super inhumane and cruel.
I feel like we hit that up pretty good. I mean, it just seems like there's some stuff to think about there, I think, if you're into that stuff or not.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think, and here's where one could say that I'm aligning with the prudes, or like whatever. I find a lot of what happens, what's going on in our culture, where I agree with the religious conservatives at time and the litmus purity left. And there's a lot of wrong and cruelty that we do to each other just because. And that just because becomes a thing that changes society, making it crueler and more mean. And I think the long arc of history so far has shown that generation after generation, we have become ethically more moral. I mean, you go back to how World War I was fought with poison gas and all that. World War II, they passed an agreement. We're not going to gas each other. I mean, which seems weird. Like, rules of war are a very strange thing. And I remember going through the classes in the Marines, like learning about Geneva Convention rules of war, and being perplexed at how there are rules to war. Like a rule on when I can shoot you.
It's weird.
Because if, like, and then there's per actual operation rules of engagement. And like when everyone rolls, and my thing, we have our house rules. And the rules are you're not allowed to fuck anyone up, even if they're too stupid to tap. You're still not allowed to fuck them up.
Can't hurt anybody.
And if everybody rolls that way, people don't get fucked up.
Yeah.
But when you shift that on, you better tap or you're going to get your arm snapped. Like I remember a phrase running around a while that came out of like McMath, which was a really bad idea because then Marines get fucking hurt, is the tap or snap. I mean, to me, that is...
Yap, tap, or snap.
Yeah, yap, tap, or snap. Like, I mean, know that on an individual level, but let's not institutionalize that mindset, right?
Let's
say farewell.
Farewell, friend.
Let's say farewell to Melissa, who's got real life concerns.
We'll
wrap
try to hold it down while you're gone.
We are pretty much wrapped up at this point. Yep.
We got some cues to hit.
Okay, let's hit some cues.
Chris is over it. You're like, get me out of here.
No, I'm good. Let's hit some cues.
Bye, Melissa.
Bye.
Bye, Melissa.
Bye.
All right. Yeah. All right. We got some cues. So, we've had this cue before. This cue came in. We've had it before, but we got it again. The same cue from a different guy. So I feel like people are curious. So let's check this out.
And also, I don't think most people sit down and hear all of every podcast, right? Okay.
They don't? I feel like they should.
I certainly have podcasts where I hear almost every episode just because I am really into their podcast, yeah.
All right, here we go. Let's check this cue out.
Hey y'all, this is a fresh blue belt out of Texas, and I've been struggling to figure out what the fundamentals of jiu-jitsu actually are. I've heard different opinions on it, and I don't feel like any of my instructors or higher ranked practitioners understand what they know to be like the true fundamentals. The best definition I've heard of was from Rob Biernacki with a base, posture, and structure triangle, as far as understanding what the physical principles are that govern jiu-jitsu. But I want to understand what you guys think the true fundamentals are. Thank you.
That's an awesome question, and it's one I think if any of us instructors or black belts are honest enough, we've thought about that a long time. Like, what does constitute a fundamental of jiu-jitsu? And for me, again, I break it in my threes. There's the mental part, the body part, and the spiritual part. And the mental part, I don't mean your mindset. I mean the knowledge. That has the software been installed? The software of we go through the positional hierarchy, but first, front mount, back mount, side mount, bottom guard, top guard, open guard, closed guard, subs, chokes, lock, choke, sweep is my three. Lock, choke, sweep. And out of each of those, the way I organize it is there are three fundamental sweeps, three fundamental guard arm bars, three fundamental guard chokes, three fundamental mount arm bars, three fundamental mount chokes. I mean, there's really two, but I kind of blended it into three because I like my threes. There's three fundamental mount escapes. And so I branched it in my threes because I like my threes. I used to say that there's 18 absolutely fundamental things that you have to know how the chess pieces move in order to play the game. Then blue belt through a brown belt is the real learning phase, right? And the fundamentals then slightly change, I think, per belt often. And so, I mean, I'll ask you, like, when you hear that, and I wish Melissa was here, it's been a good thing. Like, Melissa has written out, in her opinion, what are those fundamental things?
Let me take a whack. So, in my idea, the fundamentals, all right, you have to have a fundamental understanding of what the purpose of doing jiu-jitsu is. And I think
that's the spiritual part, I'd say.
Well, I think that's its own triangle.
Okay.
And
yeah.
Nate Diaz put it the best. Okay, we're gonna get in there. We're in a fight. We're gonna hit him with some good shit. We're gonna not get hit. We're gonna walk away with a pocket full of cash. That's what Nate Diaz said.
Okay.
So I think the purpose of jiu-jitsu is we're not gonna get hit.
You see, I don't agree with that at all.
Okay, well that's good. It's fine.
Just because, as a pro fighter, sure, but not with jiu-jitsu.
Well, I think jiu-jitsu is we're not going to get hit, right? The point of doing this is so that you can get in a fight, not get hit, hit him with some good shit, do some jiu-jitsu stuff, and then walk away.
Walk away uninjured.
Uninjured. So not get hit, hit him with some good shit, walk away. That's the purpose. So if we take that purpose...
Yes, okay, that's the purpose. Not a fundamental, but the purpose.
That's the fundamental purpose.
Oh, the fundamental purpose. Okay.
And then so considering that fundamental purpose, there's going to be three things. There's going to be fundamental strategies and tactics. there's going to be fundamental positions and transitions, and then there's going to be fundamental mindset and spirit considerations, spiritual considerations, I think. So, I might have just fucked that up. So, positions, tactics, and then principles.
Yeah, I'll just quick interruption. So in my thing of threes, each single one fractals off into other threes.
Yep.
And I have technical, tactical, strategical. That is the fundamental overarching thing you do while you're learning.
Yeah.
I want to be technically proficient. I want it to be tactically useful. And strategically, which is the big overall view, right?
Yeah, and I think, so within those three things, right, strategical, tactical, technical, you're going to have fundamental components to that. And what does that mean? It's a fundamental is, all this stuff is a spectrum. There's no technique where this is the one thing that works or doesn't work.
Right.
It works at a, like, some of the time, right?
Yep.
Some percentage of the time. So the highest percentage things that can be done are the fundamental things. Because those are the things that happen the most, that we do the most, they become the most foundational parts of the thing because they work most of the time. So there's going to be high percentage things in each of those categories, and that ends up being what the fundamentals are. And every teacher is going to have different fundamentals because everybody has a little bit of a different game.
It'll be a Venn diagram where some of them overlap.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so I think a good example where you could kind of say, like, you know, you've got to go through your whole jiu-jitsu to understand what the fundamentals are for you and for your instructor.
That's an interesting perspective, yeah.
And some examples of what fundamentals are, so you can think about it, are that positionally, you could say closed guard is a fundamental. Knowing what a closed guard is, that's a fundamental. Knowing what an arm bar is, how to do an arm bar, and the intricacies of an arm bar, that's a fundamental. That's like positional fundamentals. Strategical, tactical fundamentals are going to be take the person down,
stay on top,
take the person down,
golden
stay on
rules,
top, pass their legs, secure a pin, secure a submission, finish.
Golden rules.
Those
I call that.
steps, not skipping any of those steps and running through that sequence is a strategical.
That's a strategical fundamental base, yes.
Right. And then
the tactics are what chain of moves I use to accomplish it. And the technical is, do I have my arm in the right way? Am I using too much strength or whatever? Yeah.
And then we go over to the conceptual side, and there's fundamental concepts like having a good base at all times is a fundamental concept. The one I like to call flow with the go, which is a fundamental concept that, like, you're not going to push up against something that's a stone. You're going to flow with it. And if energy comes this way, you're going to take that energy and flow with it. These are fundamental concepts.
See, I call that in my threes frame, flow, weight distribution. Those are the three things that if you're only doing one, it isn't right. If you're even doing two, you're lopsided. It's balancing that.
Nice.
Frame, flow, because people often think frame means stiff.
No,
but frames have to flow.
Right.
And it's not only your own weight distribution, it's awareness of your opponent's weight distribution. And that is the...
Well, it was like last night we were training and you were like, good frames. But I was like, frame and relax, right? It was like a flowing
You
frame.
were really doing what I call the simultaneous frame and flow.
Yeah.
Because I think most, like, very common with lower belts, when they first discover the power of framing, they overdo it and they overexert, and then they miss a lot because they're not including flow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But so to answer this guy's question, it's like we can't explicitly say, like, these four things are the fundamentals. Other than that, there's going to be high percentage positions and transitions and that you're going to learn from your teacher. There's going to be a fundamental philosophy behind the strategy and tactics, which are the basic strategies and tactics for, hitting them with some good shit, not get hit, walk away. And then there's going to be some fundamental concepts as far as, and I would say that the concepts almost end up being the spiritual component, because the essence that Hickson talks about, it's like you have those concepts are so deeply ingrained into you that vibe, that spirit, that energy, that's the concepts in you. And so,
like I distinctly remember, like now it was like 7 or 8 years ago, and Hickson telling me, he's like, Chris, I'm not going to show you any jiu-jitsu you don't already know, but I'm going to help you find the essence of jiu-jitsu. And what he really helped me become aware, even times when I had it but wasn't aware of what I had, was that frame and flow and weight distribution. And then the base comes out of that. And balance and base are not the same thing. And so, like I can see a jiu-jitsu test that either Horion created, Huron made, or someone else out there, and people will say, what on this test don't you like? And it's like, no, I like every move on this, but like back to the belting, that only is the software part. And what I need is that's the mind part. We need the spirit, the essence, and a body part, which is, can you perform it?
And I think that I love the spiritual component of the whole thing, because I actually think like being engaged in the culture helps you absorb some of the.
I think so.
And I think that's awesome. Music.
And I
all these things.
Yes, I also think so when I was lower belt. And here's a thing that I will say that us Americans did, Europeans too, say it, that one could say it's counter to the Brazilian jiu-jitsu culture. One of the things is we would play music when you roll. Now, I got that from wrestling practice. We would play the country music. Like that was just a thing that when you were rolling hard, we'd play the country music. And I realized how much that relaxes you and puts you in a state of flow and nowness that I don't get in a quiet room or just hearing, I would rather hear that sound of music, right? So like that's a thing, obviously, that once I became the guy in charge of the mat room, it's like we need a fucking stereo.
Yeah.
And there are aspects that I observed that the Brazilian jiu-jitsu culture picked up, that they went back to the roots from Japan and would bring in some of their cultural cues. And one thing that I've never done, but I really like, is how everyone lines up at the end, shake everyone's hand, and the hugging chain.
Yes,
like,
nice.
I think that's a good way of closing a class out.
Yeah, I agree.
Because I never closed the class. It's like, all right, guys, open mat. And then everyone just kind of rolls and fizzles off. And people who like closure want that closure.
Yeah, it's nice respect at the end. I was just going to say, it was funny, last night we were training, and I swore I was about to tap you out. I was like, oh yeah, I got you in this submission that I've been trying to get you in for a long time. And I was like, oh yeah, I think I got him. Like in my mind, I was like, oh, it's happening. Yeah, I got him. And then you go, oh, I love this song.
Oh, I like it.
You're just totally not even anywhere close to getting tapped out and not phased and listening to the music. I was like, damn.
Music helps.
Yeah, it's amazing.
That's true.
So hopefully that helps answer the fundamentals question, and wasn't too confusing for this guy and for anybody. I think the problem is that fundamentals sounds like it should be easy and basic and simple.
True.
But the reality is that it's not. That's why I kind of say like
that's what you work the rest of your life.
Yeah,
it's trying to refine the fundamentals.
Yeah, I feel like you don't really know the fundamentals till you're like a black belt.
It feels like, I mean, I've always believed in Carlos Machado when I was a new a black belt, he explained it very well. He says, Chris, now jiu-jitsu begins. And it gave me that thing which I've always now done when I promote people or I get a stripe, is that's the point where you consciously say, I'm going to let everything go again and relearn the fundamentals, relearn the jiu-jitsu. And that black belt, like if the jiu-jitsu is ever to become an Olympic sport, there's not going to be purple belt Olympics, the jiu-jitsu. It's all black belt. So then black belt is when it begins. If the goal is to become the best black belt in my weight class in the world, then it's and not that it's bad to be the purple belt world champion. That's fucking cool. Super cool. But that really is a stepping stone to I'm going to say spiritually in the competitive world, what matters is adult division black belt, right? And that's kind of so everything is practiced to the black belt, and then you begin to really learn the jiu-jitsu. But at the same time, I think what people realize then is there is no end goal. Mm-hmm. That it's all just fucking training, including competing. And then people say, well, what are you training for? You could say the hypothetical, real time in real life where you actually have to protect life and limb and you need to make that happen. Then your thing that you say with Nate definitely works, right?
Yeah.
That becomes...
Yeah, for sure. That's how they explained it in judo too, to me when I started judo, is that when you get your black belt, you now know judo, and you can really start to refine and learn what the fundamentals are. That's kind of the way they described it. But cool.
That makes sense.
I think we nailed it. You want to wrap this show up and get
Let's wrap the show up.
All right, a little bit of a scramble, but we got it done.
We got it done.
Yeah. So we'll go.
We adapted.
We adapted. Let's go to this camera. Right. 1, 2, 3. Pound, like, and subscribe.
Well, we all have targets on our backs these days.